So I'm already hearing a lot of stuff about The Last Jedi. I already said I liked it, and I recorded that before people were making reviews, so I didn't know it was a hot take at the time. If I did, I would have given it a clickbait title about how it was a hot take. Anyway, not everybody has to like every movie and whatever, but whenever I see people list the reasons they don't like it, I tend to see the same things popping up again and again, and those reasons are bad. So I made a list. Number 10, Snoke didn't end up being anything. I don't know, Snoke was like a clever misdirection. We were supposed to think he was our big generic villain guy, and then he was dispatched so a crazed loose cannon could step in. And that's more exciting to me. Snoke was lame. Or should I say, LeMay. Like in Game of Thrones with the Red Wedding, I thought the whole reason everybody thought that was clever is that it showed that a character you thought was invincible because of established tropes they fulfilled could actually just be unceremoniously killed off. The character who would normally be the friendly, sexy, conquering king, it just gets horrifically killed in like a weirdly brutal way. And the baby, too. And that's a clever subversion of expectations. Like, I saw people sad about the Red Wedding or shocked, but I didn't see anybody like, this sucks, they totally didn't fulfill his character. I also never understood people's compulsion for Snoke to, like, be something. I mean, for the duration of the original trilogy, the Emperor was just an evil guy in a robe, and that didn't seem to bother anyone because Darth Vader was the villain with the actual nuance and personality, just like Kylo Ren is that for this trilogy. The Emperor was just a two-dimensional obstacle to be defeated, and taking out that obstacle in the second movie with a whole movie left to go just kind of means that the third movie in the trilogy is less able to stick to a predictable formula, which I think is a good thing. I feel like the people who were so mad that Snoke died wouldn't have even been mad if first he had been like, I was once known by another name, Darth Plagueis the Wise. Even though that wouldn't inform us of anything new of his personality or change his role in the story in any way. Number 9, I can't believe Kylo Ren is the villain now. He's not even a good villain because I hate him. He's just a whiny baby and he's not even scary. I think people who hate Kylo Ren as a villain have a particular need to feel vicariously empowered by seeing a big strong villain who can hit people really hard and is good at everything. Remember when I said if people don't like The Last Jedi, ask them if they liked Rogue One? Okay, I'm not going to go too deep into my fandom psychology seminar, but let's play another quick game. If people say they hate Kylo Ren as a villain because he's whiny and unthreatening, ask them if they love the character Negan from The Walking Dead. I'm trying to think of all the blockbuster movies I've enjoyed and trying to remember which ones had a villain that I was genuinely afraid of in real life. And I guess when I was a kid, I thought the scary judge from Roger Rabbit was scary. Those mutants from The Hills Have Eyes were scary. That's not a good movie. With villains, as with any character, I think what makes them good is if they have an interesting personality. Kylo Ren is extremely emotional and unstable, which makes him unpredictable. And to me, that makes him a good villain. And you want to see him reformed, or I do. To me, the fact that he's a former good guy and he has a mom that loves him and he has a weird hand-holding connection with Rey, and he cries a lot, and he might turn good again. That doesn't make me go, this sucks, we don't have a real villain. He's extremely strong in the Force. Remember when he stopped that blaster bolt with his mind powers? And like, he's low-key crazy. So even though I think he might get redeemed, if he had like a fight against Poe Dameron or something, I would still be worried he might kill him. It doesn't seem like he wouldn't do that. In any family action movie, you know that ultimately the good guys are going to win. If Snoke was still around, there wouldn't be a lot of tension over whether or not Rey was going to kill Snoke. You know Snoke's gonna die. But with Kylo Ren, there's a couple different directions that it can go, and I think that's interesting. Like, he could stay evil and die, he could sacrifice himself and die, he could turn good and live, but he is gonna get reformed. I am sure of it. And anyway, Kylo Ren isn't all we've got in the way of villains. We still have Hux and the Knights of Ren, wherever they went, and the entire First Order. My finger is bleeding. I'm gonna go get a Band-Aid. Shark Week Band-Aids because sharks like blood. Number 8, there's nothing left to do because they've virtually ended the story. Or this movie was pointless because the status quo was unchanged. One thing you might notice about these critiques is that they directly contradict each other, but I have been hearing both with equal frequency. These are also both equally baffling statements to me. The people who say the status quo hasn't changed usually say Kylo Ren is still evil, Rey is still not trained, Luke is still gone, the First Order is still in power, the Resistance is still struggling, nothing happened. But like, the status quo changed in a huge way. There were several moments where I was like, I can't believe they went there. The Resistance wasn't doing too hot before, but now they have like 30 people left. They're at a huge disadvantage. Rey still can get trained as a Jedi because she has the Jedi books, and Luke's a freaking ghost now, so he could show up and train her, or he could appear to Kylo Ren. I don't know what they're gonna do with that. But they could do things with that. Frankly, I didn't even understand people's interest in seeing Rey get trained in this movie. I thought her status as like a scrappy underdog who knows how to hit people good with a stick but doesn't have any formal training is kind of what made her a good foil to Kylo Ren. Because he's basically a mean Jedi prep school kid who's technically a prince and now literally an emperor. And speaking of which, Kylo Ren is in charge of the First Order now. That's a huge status quo change. Did he even want that? I don't think so, based on his offer to Rey. He has even less of a clear motivation than Snoke did. Like, his motivation seems to just literally be make people respect him. And that's why he's so fun. And now Hux has to work for him and he's miserable. And Kylo Ren's miserable. He's in charge of this army that he didn't want, surrounded by people who hate him and want him dead. The villains are just a lot of really unhappy people just crying and blowing up planets for no reason. And for the people that say they already wrapped up the story, like, I don't even know what to say. I just kind of assume they have no imagination. The scary mutant guy on the throne got killed, so I guess the story's over. Number 7, Rey's parents didn't end up being anything. I don't know why Star Wars fans are so dynastic about it. If Rey wasn't raised by her parents and she doesn't remember them, then they don't really affect her character at all, unless they have any hereditary conditions she needs to know about. If her parents abandoned her, maybe that will make her feel angry or betrayed. And if they loved her and died, maybe that will make her feel sad or vengeful. And that's literally the only degree to which they matter. Beyond that, her knowing their names are Kenobi or Binks or whatever doesn't really hold any additional value. I mean, her parents being dead garbage people who sold her for drinking money is a reveal in itself. But like, I get it. People like to hear familiar names. Number 6, Luke Skywalker would never try to kill his nephew. Luke believed Darth Vader could be redeemed, so why wouldn't he try to redeem his own nephew instead of killing him? Vader was Luke's stronger enemy, who he demonstrably could not kill if he tried. And he did try. I feel like people forget that. I mean, unless he was swinging his lightsaber toward his neck in a friendly way. Luke was unable to kill him, but once he heard his backstory and had reason to think that redeeming him might work, he kind of figured that was worth a shot. Ben was his nephew, who was at Luke's mercy, and Luke had a vision of Ben murdering a bunch of people Luke cared about, including other children. Luke had an open opportunity to prevent this before it happened by killing Ben. He literally just had the thought, I could do that. The idea occurred to him. And then after like half a second of considering it, he decided not to and was horrified with himself for even thinking about it. If the flashback had been a long, drawn-out duel of Luke actively trying to kill Ben and Ben trying to defend himself, I would be like, yeah, that's not really what I'd expect from our good guy. But that's not what happened. Also, to put it one way, it feels a little weird to see people so up in arms over seeing a heroic Jedi character momentarily considering doing a bad thing to protect his loved ones, when the universe has pre-established the idea of the dark side, a specific evil force whose whole thing is trying to tempt people into doing bad things. Like, if you had to make a checklist of things that canonically you would expect Jedi to do, it would go like meditate, have a lightsaber, and resist the ongoing insidious temptation to do bad things. But that doesn't make sense. Luke resisted temptation that one time, and that means that he'll never be tempted to do bad things again. just like temptation works in the real world. Number 5, Leia Poppins. This is a small one for me because I kind of get it. You're probably like, then why is it number 5? The list is arbitrary. Sorry. If people's issue is that visually the image of an ice-encrusted Princess Leia flying through outer space like Superman is kind of a silly image, then like, yeah, it is. For me, not enough that it really took me out of it. And some people feel differently. Like I said, I get it. But I'm seeing some people complain in the context of, since when did Princess Leia have the Force? Which, she's had the Force the whole time. They told us in the original trilogy. And then people are like, when did she have training? Well, it's been 30 years. I don't know. Also, it appears in canon that when people are strong in the Force, it will come to them in times of need. Like almost as a second nature. Like when Rey called that lightsaber to her without knowing that that was a thing she could do. Or how Ezra would use the Force to help him in his heists without knowing that it was the Force he was even using. Ezra's the one from Rebels, in case you're a fake fan who doesn't watch children's programming. Or Anakin, was it the Force he was using when he was like age 9, really good at flying ships and building robots? Or was she just good at that stuff? I don't think they ever told us. Considering this was Carrie Fisher's last performance as Princess Leia, I was kind of glad that we got to see her use the Force at least one time, since it turned out that this was our last chance. Okay, this one is from my personal Facebook feed, so I have to block out the name, but this is one of the worst takes I've heard. Number 4, everything was Holdo's fault for not anticipating that Poe was going to ruin everything and taking the time to gently take him aside and explain her entire plan to him. Remember that whole opening scene about how Leia is emotionally taxed by the loss of life in this war, and Poe is willing to sacrifice people here and there in order to blow stuff up? They're just people. It's an entire ship. So Poe just got demoted for disobeying orders, specifically in the context of having a disregard for human life because the ends justify the means. Holdo's plan is to sacrifice their biggest, strongest warship in order to save as many lives as possible. We, the audience, know, or at least assume, that Poe isn't a horrible monster and would ultimately agree that this is a wise course of action. But what reason would Holdo have to believe that he'd go along with it, when everything she knows about him, a guy she just met, suggests the exact opposite? Also, it's possible that this military leader doesn't think that it's the wisest course of action to reveal every facet of her plan to every single person on the ship, because it's sensitive information, and if the enemy found out, it could result in a lot of people being blown up, which turns out to be what happened. Oh, because Poe found out about the plan. Number 3, people hate the kid with the broom at the end because they think that now we're gonna get a film about the kid with the broom learning to be a Jedi. Oh my god, it was an epilogue. I feel like some of these people have never watched a movie before. It's like when War of the Worlds played on the radio and nobody's old-timey brains could handle that it was a fake thing. I feel like nobody is taking the broom boy scene as a storytelling device in a movie, and instead everyone is taking it in the most literal context of, this is a character now. This is like if people watched Titanic and they were like, oh my god, I can't believe they were cheap enough to set up a sequel where they're all ghosts on the ghost Titanic. Number 2, the B-plot was pointless because their plan didn't even work. Yes, the B-plot was pointless except for being the strongest illustration of the whole theme of the movie. The theme of The Last Jedi is failure and being able to learn from past mistakes. Yoda even says it in like a really convenient thesis statement. If this was a think piece, that Yoda quote would be the inset text in big bold letters about halfway down the page. The Jedi Order failed Anakin and failed to see what was going on with Palpatine, and the whole thing fell apart because they were failures. Luke failed himself by being tempted by the dark side, and he failed Ben and made him turn evil. Snoke was so arrogant he failed to see that his apprentice was going to kill him, the ugly deformed monster that physically tortures him, instead of Rey, the pretty girl who was nice to him and held his hand. Snoke even made that statement about how it's a good idea to keep around a crazy man who's evil because you can manipulate him into doing exactly what you want him to. That statement was very wrong, and he got murdered because he was a failure. The Praetorian Guards failed. No, I'm kidding. Those don't count as real characters. They did fail, though. Rey wanted to get trained as a Jedi, and she thought she could turn Kylo Ren good again, and she failed at both of those things. For now. So when Kylo Ren says, "Let the past die," the reason he says that is that he's the villain and he's wrong. He's a big failure. He's not learning anything from the past. In the last movie, he stabbed his dad through the chest, and it crippled him emotionally, got him shot in the gut, and ultimately led to his defeat. That was a pretty significant mistake on his part. In this movie, he couldn't resist going down there on the ground and stabbing his other father figure through the chest, and that made him play right into Luke's hand and gave the Resistance time to get away. It's Kylo Ren making the same mistakes over and over and not learning from them. He was defeated in the last showdown specifically because he let the past die and he forgot to learn from it. Granted, I don't really know how else that could have gone for him that would have been any better. Like if Kylo Ren had taken Luke's offer and been like, "I want to be good again," I imagine General Hux would have taken the opportunity to shoot him with every cannon on every ship, and Luke and Leia are watching horrified as little Ben is shot into little crunchy bits out on the salt. And then we have Finn, Rose, and Poe. And they have like a 12-step plan, and it goes wrong at many different steps throughout. And if they hadn't done anything, probably only Admiral Holdo would have died. And instead, like, most of the Resistance died. So this was a net loss. So basically what I'm saying is you can say whatever you want about the Finn and Rose subplot. Like, you can say you were bored subjectively by it, or it would have been cooler to see them undercover at the First Order ship the whole time and not have them go to that casino planet at all, which is what I personally think, and they looked really cool in the outfits too. Or you didn't like it because of racism or something. But you don't get to complain that it was pointless because they failed. The fact that they failed was the whole point. Number one, the film challenges you. This is the take I've heard most often, usually by people who don't even have a strictly negative opinion of the film. They're like, "Hey, it was okay, but a lot of fans won't like it because it challenges them." So I had about a week of lead time between me seeing the film and it coming out, and in that span of time, I was just comfortably telling people with confidence, "Yeah, you're gonna like it." Because I was remembering all the stuff people complained about after The Force Awakens, and all the stuff people said they liked Rogue One for that I didn't relate to. This movie didn't just do all the stuff that Empire did. It had some unexpected stuff. You know, stuff like Snoke dying, where I was like, whoa, they went there. So I was like, okay, no one's gonna complain that it's just a retread of familiar stuff. And then it had stuff that I consider really pandery. Yoda shows up. You have a really cool lightsaber fight. You have Luke demonstrating huge force ability and getting to show off to a whole army at the end. I'm not saying this stuff was pandery in a negative way. I just, like, that's what I felt like it was. And I was like, okay, all the people who have spent the last year telling me that Rogue One was awesome because Darth Vader cut people's heads off with his lightsaber, they're gonna like all that stuff. So there's something for everybody. It's a romp for the whole family. Maybe it won't be everybody's favorite, but everybody will like it. And then literally the day before the movie came out, I ran into somebody else that had seen a pre-screening, and I was like, wasn't it great? Just conversationally. And he went, I hated it. I literally felt like my vision had tunneled, like I had seen a ghost. If I was in a movie, the camera would be doing the thing where it's pulling back while zooming in on my shocked face. And I was like, oh, why is that? And he was like, it wasn't as good as Rogue One. Which, just my entire worldview of the past week was rocked to its foundation. Anyway, those were the complaints that annoyed me the most. Sorry everybody wanted me to do this big takedown of the movie and I liked it instead. Whoops. I mean, I had complaints too, they just weren't anything that was big enough to detract from my overall enjoyment of the movie. Most of my complaints were little things that I thought were weird. Like when Snoke floats Rey over to the window to show her the Resistance ships being blown up, and they're like perfectly framed in that magnifying lens. Like, I know he can see things that are happening using the Force, so I don't begrudge him knowing the timing and getting that down. But like, the lens was right there. When was the lens installed? That's incredible foresight. Or how come they have a new, different armor design for the Stormtrooper executioners? I mean, they're all soldiers, so couldn't any of them fill the role of executioner at any time? In a culture where all of them have been conditioned from birth, is there really that much of a call for out-of-combat, in-house executions? Is executioner those guys' dedicated role, and are they in the outfit at all times? If so, wouldn't that negate the anonymity of an executioner's hood? Or is anonymity even the goal when you're in an army where everybody is wearing face-covering masks 100% of the time? Do the executioner ones have trouble making friends in the mess hall? Because I can't imagine their presence is great for morale. Or, this is my most specific complaint, and I haven't seen anybody else say this. Rey calls Kylo Ren a murderous snake. And then, when DJ betrays Rose and Finn, Rose calls DJ a lying snake. I guess you see snakes on Dagobah, so the Star Wars universe does have snakes. But what are the odds that Rose and Rey, who both come from completely different planets, would both be familiar with snakes? And what are the odds that the two totally separate cultures they were both raised in both use snakes in their expressions as a creature that carries negative connotations? It took me completely out of the moment. Instead of paying attention to Finn fighting Captain Phasma, I was sitting there like, does every planet in the Star Wars universe have snakes? Are there some cultures that have a different idea about what it means to be like a snake? Like in episode 9, will Poe Dameron pay someone a compliment by calling them clever as a snake? Because on his home planet, snakes are known for solving complex puzzles. Or is it possible that that snake we saw on Dagobah wasn't a snake? It was just an alien with a different name that resembled an Earth snake. Maybe snakes are not a creature in the Star Wars universe. Maybe the word snake is just an extremely vulgar cuss word, and those insults that Rose and Rey were saying were actually a lot stronger than we thought they were. What other expressions in this universe contain the word snake? I'm gonna start saying, for snake's sake, land snakes. And then I was like, oh my god, Captain Phasma just died. I don't even know why people were debating about Snoke's identity. Obviously, if he turned out to be anyone, he would be the other George Lucas character that's already named the Supreme Leader. The villain from Captain EO. That Supreme Leader was reformed by Captain EO unlocking her true inner beauty through the power of dance, which hopefully that'll be how Supreme Leader Kylo Ren's redemption arc goes.